Alright, in this video, I'm gonna be teaching you how to create a RAG agent for your website that gets its information by scraping everything. So your agent won't just use information from your system prompt, but it'll actually get the information from the scraped site. And for the content, well, first off, we're gonna check out a demo so you can see how this actually works. Then we're gonna do a little overview of what RAG is. And after that, we'll see how to scrape a website to feed all of its information to an LLM. And once we have all of that scraped information, then we'll also see how to transform that data into a RAG-friendly format. So once we have that RAG knowledge base, then I'll teach you how to create agents to query that exact database. And last but not least, I'll teach you how to embed this fully functioning agent into your website as a chat box in the bottom right corner. But for the requisites, well, of course, we're going to use N8N, which if you don't know is a no-code automation platform. So basically your base plate in which you'll build everything on top of. But then we're also going to need an LLM. So in this case, we're going to use OpenAI, but you can use whichever one you like. And next, for the database that we'll create with all of the website data, then we'll use Supabase. And then as a bonus to scrape complex websites, well, we'll use Firecrawl. But without further ado, then let's just go and check out the demo. Alright, so here I'm in a website of a gym. And here, like any other business, well, we can see what services they offer, some more information of who they are, their locations, and so on. So here to start the scraping, you can just copy the URL, go to your N8N workflow and set the website URL right here, and then just execute the workflow. So then after a couple of seconds, it has scraped the whole website and sent all of that data to our Supabase vector store. So if we go and check our database, then you can see that all of the information is right here. And boom, that means we have everything ready to go. So now if you have your agent connected to that specific database, then we would be able to ask it anything. So here if we go back to the website, you can see that they offer Zumba as a class or a service. So let's ask, do you offer Zumba? And boom, it replies, yes, we offer Zumba classes at World Gym, and some more information. Then it also tells us the source URL of where it found that specific information, which is this URL. And on top of that, we also get a call to action. So that's working perfectly. But now let's look at how this works in the website chat box. So in this case, I'm using a dummy website because I do not own the World Gym website. So for the sake of this demo, let's just imagine this chat box is embedded in the World Gym website. But anyways, what you will do is you can just click on it and you'll see some information right here. This is all the default design, but of course you can change everything like the font, like the color, etc. So now let's go ahead and ask it a question. So in this case, let's ask it about yoga. So do you offer yoga? And boom, as you can see, it replies perfectly, yes, we offer yoga classes at World Gym. Then it tells us some more facts, then the source URL and the CTA. So that's amazing, and by the way, this whole response will depend on your system prompt. But anyways, now that we have checked out the demo, then let's just get started building everything. But before that, I quickly also want to mention our school community called No Code AI Automators. Here you'll be able to access all of the N8N workflows that I build on my YouTube channel, including the ones that we'll check out in this video. You'll also get an intro to AI automation and agents if you're starting in this space from scratch, and you'll also receive the N8N Launchpad to start creating in N8N. So if my videos and the AI and automation space resonate with you, then I would highly recommend you to join. But anyways, now let's actually get started with the video. So first off, of course, you need to have N8N. N8N has two versions, so the cloud version, which is the one you normally get on their website, or you can also get the community edition, which is a version you can self-host. And if you're a bit confused, well, the main difference is that for the cloud version, specifically this starter plan, is that it starts at $20 per month. And you can only run your workflows 2,500,000 times per month. But for the community version, since it's self-hosted, then you have unlimited uses. So this is the one that I use and recommend. And how you can get the self-hosted version is, well, of course, hosting it yourself. And in this case, I do it via virtual private server with Hostinger. So as you can see, Hostinger provides two VPS versions, so the link for this special self-hosted N8N VPS will be available in the description. In this case, you have to select the self-hosted N8N one, and this just means that N8N will come preloaded in your server. For the pricing, then I recommend you to use this one called KVM2, because if you're gonna do AI workflows on N8N like the ones I do on my YouTube channel, as well as maybe hosting other applications in the server like these ones, then this is the ideal one. These VPS have never failed me, and I also use it for my clients, so this should be a good option. So just go ahead and select choose plan. Then once inside, you'll be able to see a period selector. I recommend you to keep it at 24 months so you get the cheapest option available. Then if you scroll down, you'll see where your server will be located. So in my case, the United States one is the most closest to me, so that would give me the best latency, so I select that one. But then down here, you'll be able to select what application to come installed with. So in this case, you can select N8N or N8N with 100 workflows. And why not? We can just select this one right here. And then before we continue with the order, then we can also add a coupon code. So here you can just put in my name, Ricardo, and you'll be able to access this exclusive code. So then just click on apply and boom, you'll have your discount set up. So yes, make sure you put in the Ricardo coupon and also to use my affiliate link down below in the description, because yes, this is an affiliate, which means that I may get a commission if you purchase via my link at no extra cost for you. So once you have these, then you can just click on continue to set up the payment. So then once you have purchased it, you'll be able to set up the server. So here you can just create your root password and then your VPS will be setting up. So this will take about 5 minutes or so. So once that finishes, then you can go to your VPS dashboard. So just click on manage VPS right here and boom, now you'll be bought inside. So here is where you'll be able to see all of your server usage data, like how much memory it's using, how much CPU power it's using, and so on. But right now we're here for N8N, so to access that, then in the top right you can see manage apps, so just click on that. And then you'll be brought to this N8N page, so just quickly set up your owner account with your email name and password. Then click on next, and boom, we're now inside N8N. So here we have a little server, so you can just click on get started without putting anything to skip that. And then you'll be able to see this window, which will give you a free activation key to access these extra features. So here make sure that your email is set up correctly and then click on send me a free license key. And then if you check your email, you'll see that N8N has sent you the code. So just copy that license key. Then back in N8N, you can just click on the bottom left and these 3 dots, then click on settings and click on enter activation key. So just paste that in and you'll see that your license has been activated. So boom, that's it. Now you have N8N self-hosted on your own private server with 100 extra templates. So now you'll be able to use N8N unlimitedly. And now that you have fully set up N8N, then let's get started with the RAG agent. So first off, if you don't know what RAG is, well, it basically stands for Retrieve, Augment, and Generate, RAG. Or in other words, Retrieval Augmented Generation. And this simply means to find useful information to add it to the AI's knowledge to create a better response. For example, in a normal conversation with an LLM, you just prompt it and it'll give you a response. But with a RAG framework, well, again, you just prompt the LLM, but now instead of the LLM simply giving you an answer, it first goes ahead and checks another set of prepared data and retrieves it so it can give you a better response. And all of this is very important because of these 2 points. So first off, for a normal framework, let's say you ask the LLM to give you the financial reports of your company for the month of July. So in this case, the LLM isn't trained on that specific data, so it'll just tell you that it doesn't know or it will hallucinate. And well, with RAG, you just ask it the same question, but now the LLM, since it doesn't know the answer for that, it'll just go ahead and check this prepared data and retrieve the appropriate information. So let's say this prepared data is a bunch of financial files for the year of 2025. So in this case, it'll just retrieve the ones from July. And once it has that, it'll generate a better response now with accurate information. So that's point 1 of why this is all important. And the second reason of why this is important is because of the token limit. For example, for a normal scenario, let's say you're asking the LLM questions about N8N. And since you want it to give accurate and up-to-date information, then you just go ahead to the N8N documentation, copy all of the text and paste it into the prompt. So now whenever you ask it a question, you also pass along all of that documentation and then it'll give you a response. So in this case, everything would probably work normally. But the downsides of this is 1, you'll probably reach the token limit or get very close to it, making this super expensive. And 2, with this huge prompt that the LLM would need to process, then it would most likely hallucinate. So since we don't want that, then in this case, we should use a RAG framework. So now whenever you ask the LLM a question about, for example, how to post to YouTube with N8N, then it'll just go ahead and check that prepared data and retrieve only the part that talks about the YouTube node. So let's say that was only 200 words. So now with that information, then it'll generate a better response and with less tokens. So yes, that's essentially what RAG is and how it works in simple terms. So this should be enough so you can easily understand this tutorial, but along the tutorial I'll still explain maybe some things that are important for this. So don't worry about that. But now that we have that out of the way, then let's see how this RAG agent workflow works. So in this case, I'll split the workflow into two main parts. The first one is the RAG pipeline, so to get all of the data from the website to our database. And the second part is the RAG agent, so we can actually chat with the data. Okay, so first off, let's check the RAG pipeline. Here we simply start with scraping the site. So right here I have a set node where I just put the website URL. And in this case, I'm using this worldgym.com as an example. So you can just go ahead and copy your URL into this placeholder. So then if I click on execute step, then we'll just have the URL under this website URL expression or variable. Then next off, to scrape the website, then I'm just using a simple HTTP request with the method as get, and for the URL I just map in that URL we had from before. And this should be it, but as an extra to make sure that this scraping works, then we also send in some headers. In this case we're using user agent, accept, and accept language. And in a nutshell, what all of this does is it basically tricks the browser into thinking that you're a real human and not a bot. So if you want this, you can just ask ChatGPT to give you some headers for scraping, and it'll give you these three. So once you have all of this, then you can just go ahead and again click on execute a step, and then you'll get all of this HTML data. So right here we have successfully scraped the website, but this is not enough because this is just for this home page. But as we can see here, we also have some other sub pages, like for the classes we have a yoga page. For the about section we have this testimonials sub page, and overall we have a lot of other sub pages. So since we want to get the data from the whole website, then here we just have to extract all of those sub pages URLs. So that's exactly what we do in the second step. So here I'm just using a HTML node. For the operation I set it as extract HTML content because all of this is HTML and we're just extracting information from it. Then for the source data we use the default N8N one, which is JSON. And for the JSON property, well, since the data comes in named as data, then we just type in data right here. And then for the extraction values, I just named my key subpages URLs, so you can name this whatever you want. And then for these three properties, just copy what I'm doing right here. So for the CSS selector, I put it as A, and for the attribute, I put it as href. And what this basically means is that it'll extract all of the URLs that it finds in this HTML. So once you have that, then just enable return as array and then execute a step. So then once you execute this, you'll receive this whole list of URLs. And as you can see, it's a bit disorganized. So for example, here we have this hashtag main content. Here we have this empty one. Then the next ones are missing the World Gym domain. These ones are just their social media URLs. And we got another empty one and so on. So now what we have to do is filter all of the ones that we don't need. And we also need to add the main domain before these endpoints. So to do that filtering, I'm just using a code node. And for this, I just asked ChatGPT to give me the JavaScript code. And in this case, I just told it to delete all of the URLs that have these endpoints, so audio files, video files, and so on. And then this big part basically just deletes the URLs that are broken or empty and adds the main domain at the start if it doesn't already have it. So now if we run this, then you'll see that we now have the pretty URLs. So all of these are perfectly working. So for example, let's just select this gyms one and copy it into our browser, and boom, it just brings us to the gyms subpages where it talks more about their features. But yeah, now since we have all of these working URLs, then we're having a bigger view of the whole website. So now we're free to scrape each and every one of them. So next off, since this whole list is just one item, then we just need to split them out. So I'm just using this split node. And for the field to split, I just put in URLs because this list is called URLs. And then let's just execute a step. Then you'll see all of the URLs as just independent items. And then for these 31 items, we just have to scrape them. And here I'm just using a loop node to do that. So we scrape each URL individually and not at the same time, because if we scrape 31 URLs at the same time, then this could crash or give us an error. And to do that, you just need to put a loop node right here and make sure your batch size is at 1, because we want to process 1 at a time. And then inside the loop, well, again, we're using a HTTP request to scrape the website. So let's go inside here and let's just execute a step. So as you can see, the loop over items node also executes. So let's actually just go back one step and go inside here. So inside this loop node, we get all of these URLs as an input, and for the output, well, we just get the first one, because like I mentioned, we're just processing one at a time. So the first one is this first one, and then once we have that, we just go ahead and scrape that specific website. So here, as you can see, it successfully scraped this URL, which, if I'm not mistaken, it's just this normal homepage. And now, before we continue just saving this data, we first have to transform all of this into Markdown. And if you don't know what Markdown is, well, you'll see in a bit, but this node basically transforms your HTML into Markdown format. So for the HTML, I just map in this data right here. And for the destination key, I just name it as Markdown content. So if I execute a step, then you can see that it transforms this whole HTML gibberish into a more structured and neater format. So just so you can get a feel of what I'm talking about, I'm just gonna copy this whole HTML and paste it into this online notepad. And as you can see, this is just pure gibberish. And now let's copy the transformed version, which is Markdown. And boom, we just get the translated version, which is just this small snippet. And here you can clearly tell that most of it is just normal human text. So that Markdown transformer node is working perfectly. And this Markdown format is the one that all LLMs easily understand. But anyways, continuing with the workflow, then we just use this set node to order all of the data. So in this case, we are saving the important stuff, which is the Markdown content. So here I just drag and drop the Markdown content right here, and then its origin source URL. So here you can just drag and drop it right here. So now if I click on execute a step, then you'll see all of the data neatly ordered. So for this URL, we have this data. And yep, that's basically what this whole loop node does. So now to let it run freely, I'm just gonna delete this and click on execute workflow, so all of these 31 items run. So now after a couple of seconds, it just finished. And if we check out the output, we can see that for all of the URLs, we get the data. So for this URL, we have this data. For this URL, which is cycling, we have this data. Then for this strength URL, we have this data, and so on. So everything worked perfectly. And then just for the sake of it, I'm actually just gonna add another set node right here and then execute this one. So as you can see, we basically have the exact same information, but in this case, I can pin this, so this little pin button just pins all of the data. And this is optional, but whenever you're actually building and developing a workflow, then every time you're testing your workflow, then you don't want this loop node to run again and again and again. You just want what it outputs, right? So in other words, I can just get access to all of this without needing to run this 32 times. But now that we have all of this prepared data of the source URL with its markdown contents, then we're ready to send everything to our database. And in this case, we're using Supabase. So before we go inside here, let's actually set up our Supabase account. So the link for Supabase will be in the description, but once you create your free account, you can just go ahead and select new project. Then for organization, just select your own organization. For the project name, I'm just gonna name it YouTube N8N Test. Then for your database, just select a strong password. I'm just gonna use this one right here. And for the region of where your database will be stored, well, just select the closest one to yourself or your users. In this case, I'm just gonna choose East US and then just click on create new project. So boom, now that we're inside, then we just need to prepare our database, or basically our table. So to do that, you can just go to the SQL editor, and here you can just put in this code that will create a table ready for RAG. So once you have all of this in, then you can just go ahead and click on run. And once you see this success message, then you can go to your table editor and you'll see a table called website data. So right here is where everything will fill up with the website content. So now we can go back to N8N. And here we're going to use a Supabase vector store node, so just go ahead and add that in. And here you first have to connect your account. So just click here, click on create new credential. And for your service role secret, well, you can just go back to Supabase, go to the left panel, click on project settings. then click on API keys, and then where it says service role, you can just click on reveal, copy it, and paste it right here. And then for your host, you can just put in HTTPS, then the 2 dots and the slash. And then in your Supabase URL, you can just get your ID, which is this weird string right here. So just copy that and paste that in, then .supabase.co, and then click on save. So as you can see, it successfully worked and now it's connected. So now let's go ahead and continue. And for this operation mode, well, we want to insert all of our data into our database, so just click on insert documents. Then for your table name, you can just go ahead and select website data. Then for the embedding batch size, well, you can just keep it as 200 because it's very balanced. And then for the options, you have to select add option. And for the query name, you have to put it as match underscore and your table name. So in this case, our table name is called website data. So let's put that in. And now before we actually execute this step, well, we need to set up these 2 sub nodes. The first one is the default data loader, which basically splits all of your data into small chunks. So inside here, let's just go ahead and set all of this up. So for the type of data, we can just select the JSON because it's the default one in NA10. Then for the mode, in this case, we're loading a specific data. So just change this to a specific data. And well, here for the data is just all of the data you want to send. So here we want to send our markdown format. So just drag and drop this right here. And then for the text splitting, you can just keep it as simple. As I mentioned, this splits it in chunks. So in this case, the simple one will just split every 1,000 characters with a 200 character overlap. And then with all of this, then we can just finish already. But since when talking to an agent, we also want the agent to tell us where it got this information. So for example, if we ask it about this data, then it'll tell us that it got it from this source URL. So since we want that, then in the options, just click on add options and click on metadata. And here for our property, we're just gonna put it as source URL. And for the value, you can just put in that source URL we prepared. So this source URL will essentially be the metadata for this content. And that would be for all of the items we have right here. So now once you have that, then we can just go ahead and set up this second sub node, which is the embeddings. So what this embeddings model will do is it'll transform all of this data in a format we can basically understand into a vector database format. Then we can just go inside this node. And here, first off, you have to connect your OpenAI account. So to do that, you can just go to this URL and it'll prompt you to create an account if you don't have one yet. But after that, then you can just go ahead and create a new secret key and copy that key and then go back to N8N, click on create new credential and paste it right here. So once you do that, you'll all be set up. And then for the model, you can just select this text embedding 3 as small. And now that we have all of these 3 nodes set up, then you're ready to send your data to the vector store. So now I'm just gonna click on execute this whole workflow. And then as you can see, it's doing its whole process of sending that information into our vector store. So this is very quick and it just finished. So let's go ahead back to our Supabase and check our table. And boom, everything is filled in already. So here for the content is where we have all of the chunks. So in this case, we selected 1,000 characters. So that's how it split it up in 1,000 characters per chunk. And then for the metadata, well, you can see from what URL this originated from. So in this case, this chunk is from this URL right here. And if we scroll down a bit, then for example, for this chunk, then we can check that its source URL is from this yoga URL. And let's just quickly verify this. So let's go to the chunk and it indeed is talking about yoga. Okay, so now that we have the database, and let's set up our agent so we can actually chat with our data. So to do that, then in your same workflow that you have this RAG pipeline, then you can just create an agent. You can just add a when chat message received node, because right now we're gonna test it out by chatting with it in the N8N interface. So once you have that in, then you can add an AI agent. So click on add option and then click on system and message, and you'll get this box where you can write your system prompt. So this will highly depend on whatever RAG agent you're trying to create. In my case, since this will be for a gym, then I just tell it that it's an AI assistant for a company called World Gym. Then I tell it to answer user questions exclusively with the Supabase RAG knowledge base tool. But after that, then I just tell it how to act, which is to be helpful and friendly, to include a source URL for citations, and to end every response with a question to keep the conversation going, and to also mention a phone number, because ideally the goal here is to get the user on the phone with a real person. And then finally, I just tell it to only discuss topics related to World Gym. So if the user is gonna talk about any other topic, then the agent will know not to do that. So yes, once you have your system prompt, then you're ready to go. Next off, we can add a chat model. So in this case, I'm just gonna delete this, and you can just click on the plus sign, search for OpenAI or whatever model you wanna use. In this case, let's use GPT-4o Mini. So if you're gonna use OpenAI, then again, you can just connect your OpenAI account. And since we already did this with the embeddings, then you'll see it right here. So just click on that. Then for the model, select the model that you like. In this case, I'm going with this one. And after that, we can add a memory. So just click on the plus sign. And here, let's just use the simple memory. Once you're inside, you can select the context window length. And each item right here is just a message from yourself and then from an agent, so every interaction. In this case, I'm just gonna bump it up to 10 just in case. And then once you have all of these basics, then your agent will basically work. And the next step would be to just add the RAG tool. So to do that, you can just click on the plus sign in the tool and search for Supabase, and select the one that's called Supabase Vector Store. And inside here, well, again, you have to connect your credential. Since you already did that, you can just select it from this drop-down menu. Then for the operation mode, well, in this case, we're going to retrieve some documents as a tool for the AI agent, so select that one. And for the description, you can just put in something simple like, call this tool to look up the website World Gym. And then for the table in which it will get all of the data, then you can just select it right here. In this case, it's called website data. And then for the limit is basically the chunks that it'll retrieve. So just for good measures, you can put in 6, so it'll return 6 chunks. And then since we do want to include metadata because the source URL of all of the contents are inside it, then you can just enable this toggle. And then for the options, just like before, you have to add the query name. So you'll see match underscore documents. So here you can just delete the documents and put in your table name. In this case, it's website data. And once you have that, then you can just go ahead and select your embeddings. So you can just click on the plus sign, then search for OpenAI, embeddings OpenAI. And here just connect your account from the drop-down and select the text embedding 3 small model. So exactly the one that we used before, and that's it. So now if I go ahead and open chat and ask it, do you offer Zumba classes? Since we already know that this is true, then boom, you can see that it replied as yes and a bit more information. Then it also replied with the source URL, so if we go ahead and test this URL out, then you'll see that this is correct. And then of course it'll just mention some messages that we instructed in the system prompt. But overall this is working perfectly. So far so good. And also if you want to see what chunks it returned, then you can just go to your logs and select the Supabase log. And right here you can see that the query for the table was Zumba classes, and the response for that query were these 6 chunks because we selected 6. So yes, this would be how the chunks would go, and the system would pick the best chunk to create a response. So okay, that's amazing. And now that we have covered this whole system with simple scraping, then let's go ahead and check this other one out with advanced scraping with Firecrawl. So for this example, I'm gonna use a pretty advanced website, which is the N8N website, and let's see how it performs. So first off, just as a refresh, I'm just gonna delete all of this data inside this table. So to do that, you can just select all of the rows, select all rows in table, and delete all rows in table. So just delete all of that, and we're now ready to go. So for the demo, I'm just gonna go ahead and execute the workflow. In this set node, I have the N8N URL. So let's just see how it goes. So okay, it just finished, and just like before, we sent some data to our Supabase table. The only difference is now that we have it from the N8N website. So everything is working exactly the same as before, but now we just have it scraped with Firecrawl. So let's go ahead and check the step by step. First off, we have a set node where we can just put in the website URL, so just put it right here. And then after that, we start the Firecrawl steps. And if you don't know what Firecrawl is, well, it's basically a tool that lets you scrape websites to turn it into LLM ready data. And in this case, we're going to use this node they have, which is called crawl a website. So if the website you want to get your information from is a bit hard to scrape, then I highly suggest you use Firecrawl instead of that simple method. But anyways, now for the node setup, well, if you go inside, then you first need to connect your account. So in Firecrawl, you can just create a free account. As you can see, the free plan gives you around 500 credits. So go ahead and do that. And then once you create your account, you will end up in this dashboard. So here, the only thing you have to do is copy your API API key, so just copy this, then go back to N8N, select create new credential and paste in your API key right here. So once you have that, then everything would be ready to go. And then for the operation, well, in this case, we want to crawl a website. So select crawl a website. Then for the URL, you can just map in your URL that we have set in. So just drag that in. But next for the limit, in this case, it's set as 50. And this essentially means the amount of URLs that it'll extract first. Then here for the delay, you can just leave it at 0. Then for the max concurrency, again, you can leave it at 100. And then that should be it. I know you have some options right here, but in most cases the default options are more than enough. So once you have that in, then you can just click on execute a step, and then this will just give you an ID. And this means that the crawling or scraping has started, and now it's your responsibility to check if it's finished and to get the contents. So to do that, we have another node to check the crawl status. And inside here, the only thing you have to do is to map in your crawl ID that you got from before. So just map that in. And then if you go ahead and execute this step, then you'll see a response like this. So the important thing right here is the status. So here it says that it's still scraping. And this is because this node ran immediately after we finished the crawl a website call. So then what we want to do here is to only proceed if it's finished. So that's why here I have a success node. So if it's false, so if it's not finished, then we just go ahead and wait a couple of seconds and then check again. And here, if it's finally finished, then it'll go through this true branch and continue with the flow. So now to create that loop, then you can just add an if node after the get crawl status. And here the only thing you have to do is to add a condition. So go ahead and grab the status into this first box. And in this case, since the status is at scraping, then that's not equal to completed. So for this case, then the if node would go to this false branch. And once it goes to the false branch, then like I mentioned, we have to wait a couple of seconds. So here just add a wait node and select 15 seconds. And once this time finishes, then you'll just get an output data exactly the same as the one from before. And this is just so the data doesn't get lost. So now that we have it, then we can just go ahead and plug it back to the crawl status. But there's an issue. If we go ahead and check the crawl status, then you can see that the parameter we need to put in is the crawl ID, so json.id. But if we go into the wait node and see, then you can see that it doesn't return an ID. So if we want to map in the ID from here to there, then that's not really possible. But the good thing is that we do indeed have the ID, but it's just a bit hidden. So it's actually inside this next parameter, so the ID is right here. So that's the exact reason why in this other node we just cleaned that ID. So here I'm using a sets node and make sure that the name is set as ID, so exactly as it should be. And then this weird expression basically just deletes everything that's not the ID. So it'll delete everything before this 4 or 5th slash and everything after this question mark. So to do this, I actually asked ChatGPT to give me it, so you can do that as well. But essentially it's this one right here. So once you have that and execute a step, you'll see that now we have the ID as a clean number. So this is exactly what this get crawl status node wanted, and we can just you can essentially leave this json.id expression, because what this $JSON means is that it'll get the ID property of the previous node. So for example, for the first run, the previous node was this crawl a website, but maybe for the second run after it goes in this loop, then the previous node would be this clean ID. So now we're successfully looping to check if the crawl status is finished, and if it is, we're continuing, and if it's not, then we will just keep looping on and on until it is. And here, as you can see, for this last run, the status was now as completed, and that checks off this if statement, so it goes ahead into the true flow. And also here is where you can see all of the data that it has scraped. So for this first item that is at 0, we can see this whole markdown, and for the source URL here, it has the official N8N website, so that's where it got its information from. And for example, if we scroll down a bit and check this 43rd item, then you can see its whole markdown and also its source URL. So apparently in this case it was the sub page where it compares N8N with make.com, but as you can see, this is all working correctly, and it's scraping the markdown with the source URL, so that's exactly what we need. But continuing, then for all of those scraped contents, then you can see that everything is just grouped into one item. So everything is in one item, as you can see in this branch. So let's go ahead and split it out with this split node. So here the only thing you have to do is to drag and drop your data from this if node into the fields to split out box, and that's it. So now when you execute this node, you'll see 51 items or whatever amount of subpages you scraped, and each with its markdown data and with the metadata. So here's where we can get the source URL. So that's looking good, and now just for the sake of it, we can use a sets node to order everything up. So here I just named a field as markdown content, and I drag the markdown content right here. And then for the source URL, I just drag the source URL, which is in this metadata column. So just drag it right here, and this is just to keep everything organized and also to pin it so we can debug it easier if we, for example, want to improve this workflow or fix it. But anyways, once you have that, then we have everything ready to go to send the data to Supabase. So here you can keep the exact same setup we did with the simple scraping rag agent. So for the table name, just put in your table name, in this case it's website data, and for this query name, then you can just put it here as well. Then for the default data loader, then again, for the data, you just map in your markdown content, and for the metadata, you just name it as source URL and map in your source URL. After that, for the embeddings, again, select the text embedding 3 small model, and that's it. So now, once you execute this whole workflow, then you'll get all of the scraped data into your Supabase table. So that's amazing, and now let's continue with the agent. So again, this is the exact same agent we had before with the same model, with the same Supabase vector store node and so on, but the only thing we changed is the system prompt, because before we were handling a gem and now we're handling this SAS, which is N8N. So for the system prompt of the AI agent, it's very similar, but I just changed the name and a bit of information. For example, now it's a no-code development automation platform SaaS, and in this case I'm not telling it to send a phone number, I'm just telling it to answer the question and keep the conversation going. So for the system prompt, that's that. And then for the Supabase vector store description, I just tell it as call this tool to look up the website N8N, so I simply just change this name. So now that we have everything ready, then let's go ahead and ask it a question. So in this case, in the website, it says that of course we can self-host N8N. So I'm just gonna ask, can I self-host N8N? And would you look at that? So it gives a very detailed response. And actually in this case, it brings us to this hosting subpage, so not like the main page. So let's just go ahead and see what's this about. And look, it also scraped this part where it explains everything about N8N self-hosting. So yeah, it did a great job at retrieving this exact subpage. And it also listened very carefully to our prompt. So there you have it. And now that we have checked all of the step-by-steps for this rag agent with Firewall and with a simple HTTP request, then let's go ahead and see how we can embed this agent into our website. And to do this, it's actually very simple to do. You just have to go to your agent, specifically to this when chat message received node, and here you'll be able to see a make chat publicly available toggle. So just turn that on, and then in the mode just change this from hosted chat to embedded chat, because we're gonna be embedding it into a website. And that's pretty much it. Then you can go to this documentation actually, and here you'll be able to see everything you need to know for this. But the specific point we have to focus in is this CDN embed HTML code. So you just have to put this into your website's HTML. And the process to do this will be different depending on what website provider you're using. In this case, I'm using WordPress, so I'm gonna walk you through how to do that. But it should be relatively easy to do, and you can ask ChatGPT how to do it. So anyways, for WordPress, you can just go to your ad plugins and search for the Code Snippets plugin, and just install this one made by Code Snippets Pro with this logo. So then once you have it, go to this left panel, go in snippets and all the snippets. And here's where you can add your own snippets. So in the top left, just click on add new. And here you can just name it N8N agent embed. And go ahead and copy this whole HTML code. And then where it says webhook URL, you can just delete this placeholder and replace it with your own placeholder. So the one that is in your chat URL. So copy this URL, then paste it here. And finally, for the type, you just have to change this from PHP to HTML. And for the location, change this to inside footer. So now you can save and activate, but before that, you just want to make sure that your workflow is turned on. So just turn it on right here. And then save and activate, and boom, when it worked, you'll be able to see this snippet created and activated. So now if I go back to my website and refresh it, then you'll be able to see this little chat icon, and if I click on it, then here is your agent embedded. So now I can just ask it any question, like I'm gonna ask it the same question, so can I self-host N8N? And as usual, just like we saw, then it gives us this very detailed response. And you can see that that was super easy. But that's not everything, because of course you can customize everything here. For example, right here the font is way too small, so of course we can make this bigger. Then here it says that my name is Nathan. Well, we can remove this or change this. Then we can also change the color of the background, this title, and so on. So to do that, you can go ahead and check the documentation, specifically this options part. And here is where you'll be able to change that title, that first message. And design wise, if you scroll down a bit, you'll be able to see customization. And here's where you can change the colors, the font, and so on. So now for all of these codes, well, I just sent it to ChatGPT and told it to merge everything into one single code. And what it gave me is this thing right here. So I'm just gonna paste it, and boom, there you have it. So this first part is the normal CDN one. Then the second part is just that design parameters. And this last part is just for the options one. So now the only thing you have to do is put in your webhook URL, and now it'll be in this last part. So let's delete this old one I had and pasting this new one for N8N. And now let's see what we can change. So here, first off, I want to change the font. So to do that, we can just search the font, and here it is. So it's chat message font size. So I'm just gonna up this to, let's say, 3. Then for this first message name, I'm just gonna change it from Nathan to Ricardo AI. So Nathan is right here. And I'm gonna delete that and put in Ricardo AI. Then I also wanna change this chat bubble color. And apparently the parameter for that is this chat color primary. So if you copy this hex color code into Google, you'll see that the color is that one right there. And in my case, I want to change it to a bluish color. So let's say this one. So let's go ahead and copy that hex code and replace it with this old one. But now let's go ahead and save this snippet. So it says snippet updated, and now we can just refresh our page, and boom, now our color is blue, our font is bigger, and it changed it to Ricardo AI. So yeah, you can clearly see that you can easily customize it with those parameters. So now you hopefully learned how to scrape websites, how to create RAG agents, and how to embed these into websites. And if you think about it, the opportunities for these are pretty good. For example, you can connect this agent to the CRM so it can save emails. You can tell it to forward this lead to an AI voice agent, and so on. So without further ado, once again, I just want to mention that the templates for these two agents, as well as all of the codes and prompts that we looked at in this video, will be available in our school community. So I highly recommend you to join if you're into the space. Also, if you liked this video, then check out my previous videos, which are very similar. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any other future ones. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.